Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Celebration Space. My name is Kaylee Phelps, and today we are talking about 2020 decor and organization trends. So I know that 2020 is almost over, but so it's October 6th, but we still have a bit of the year to go, and we're actually seeing a huge increase in home improvement projects. So a lot of the trends that we're seeing with people staying home right now are actually going to last far into the future, and we are kind of at a crossroads in a very interesting way in how different trends and stylings are actually going. So I have my list over here. I hope y'all don't mind if I use some notes, but it's really interesting, some of the dichotomy of where things are going. And like I said, I'm going to be talking about decor and organization trends because I think that they both fuel each other. So we'll dive right in, and the first one is called maximalism. So you've probably heard about minimalism quite a bit over the years. It's something that has been trending in terms of trying to get rid of things that you don't need to make more space, as I mentioned in my feng shui video and many other places, just making space for new things to come into your life. But minimalism can start to look a little bit cold. I'm someone who normally likes to have at least one item on a space, whereas minimalism in its true fashion can really just be a blank table. I'm someone that loves a centerpiece. I'm someone who loves, I like to decorate in odd accents just because that mimics nature. On the shift from minimalism of truly having cleared out space, we're going to be seeing more of maximalism. You may have seen it already. It's something where you're really going to see, if you are seeing the show Girls, I always think of the power clash. So it's really playing with colors and patterns and textures, and it also is part of one of the next subjects I'm going to talk about, which is unhung art, and really making focal spaces that are somewhat of organized chaos. So it's going to be playing with colors and patterns and really making a focal space where you can play with that. So I'm going to be posting some examples on the blog, but imagine a patterned wallpaper, a bright colored piece of furniture, and then unhung art on top of it with many accents rather than just a few accents. And normally they recommend having rhyme or reason to it, but I find this trend really fun and whimsical if it's done right, and I think that it can get a little bit dangerous for those of us who tend toward clutter. So take that with a grain of salt. The next trend, as I mentioned, is unhung art, which I think is really cool if done when using it like pepper. So peppering it throughout your house. As you can see, I have a piece of unhung art right up there. So that's just on a shelf and just leaning. I have a couple of leaning pieces in a couple areas of my home, but really I'm truly someone that wants to get things up off the floor, mostly because I've lived in smaller spaces. So that's just something also to keep in mind with all of these trends, is that when you are looking at where you're at and what your budget is, also looking at the space that you have, and if you have space for an accent wall, if you have space to play with maximalism, and also if you have space to keep things more. I have some mirrors that are just leaning against the floor, but this is more talking about layered art. I think of in 500 Days of Summer, she moves in and it's kind of the classic, she moved in and just didn't hang up her art and then it looked really beautiful. So it's something that I think that when doing it intentionally can look really beautiful. But again, looking at your own space and seeing what types of art you might want to highlight and trying to keep things at eye level if it's something you particularly want to look at yourself and also highlight with your guests. So also wallpaper, I mentioned that a couple of times, but it's back and I wanted to mention it. I also would recommend playing with stickable wallpaper. This is something that I had a ton of fun with creating a bench. I was actually going to use it as a little accent wall on a thin wall between our dining room and our kitchen, and I ended up just using it there and then decorating with some mirrored pieces, but wallpaper is back. Big, bold prints are back on wallpaper. This is kind of with the maximalism theme, and I'm trying to keep all of that information in one place before we go to some of the monochromatic and other swing of the design trends, like I said, with that dichotomy. But yes, wallpaper is back. Really big decorated bathrooms are back, and also having an accent wall with a big decoration is huge. Patterns are also something that are also trending in terms of geometric patterns and florals. So when playing with patterns, and if you are someone who leans towards maximalism or wants to try it in your own home, just because we are home all the time, it's more fun to look at a number of different items. Playing with the ratio of your patterns, having a bigger pattern as a base level, and then layering in some smaller patterns that are going to be complementary in color or in style are going to be really helpful. I've read some articles about how to really do that in terms of what style of prints are, like your classic stripes or polka dots or things like that, are going to help with a different print versus mixing and matching a bunch of challenging prints. Awesome. So layering old and new. So I thought that this one was really interesting. Classicism is back. So you're going to see busts in people's homes and some more antiques in terms of going way back to, when people had busts. And so that's going to be something, it's going to have a fresh take on it, really with some bright colors, and also layering the old and new in terms of you might have a bust next to more of a modern, wired piece or something more geometric, and it's going to be a lot of mixing and matching all of that. So you might have an antique photo next to a modern painting, just layering some of that old and new. It doesn't have to all be on theme right now. One of the trends I was reading about, and I'll link all of my sources in the written blog post, is being off trend is now on trend. So it's all about the details. It's all about what it means to you. And so that's something that I think is really liberating in terms of a fashion or decor trend, is layering that old and new and really making it your own. So with that, also multifunctional spaces, I think everyone, and Zoom rooms. So a Zoom room is really just your office basically, but making it more soundproof. But having multifunctional spaces is huge, and I think whether we like it or not, many of us have made spaces that maybe just served one purpose. They are getting a lot more action now than maybe they used to. So that is something that's huge right now. And also indoor-outdoor spaces. So outdoor spaces are a huge focal point, as many of us know, making spaces where it's really an extension of your home. I did a video on how to make a cozy outdoor porch space, and that's something that I highly recommend in terms of just making sure that you can get some time outside, and even as the weather is getting colder, bundling up and being able to get some fresh air. As we are talking about outdoor spaces as well, plants are on the rise, and real plants are where it's at. So you've probably been seeing this all over Instagram or social media, where people are buying plants and naming plants, plant babies. So, doing all of that, and that's going to be important for your mental health. I wrote an article about this as well and did a video on it. It's going to be important for your mental health, bringing some nature from outside inside, and then it's also going to be great for the air quality. Just please keep an eye on where you are at in terms of where you are in the country and what type of light sources and heat sources you have, and if you have plants outside, how you can transfer them inside, and also what to do with kids and pets. So that's something else to keep an eye on. Speaking of outdoor and nature, a lot of trends are going with bringing more nature from outside inside. As we all know, we're spending more time inside. So a lot of that is fueling different jewel tone wall colors. So we're seeing, as I mentioned, we have wallpaper, but also jewel tone wall colors. So something a little bit more bold. Also, warmer colors are more on trend than cooler colors right now. So more of an earth tone with like a heavier beige, or more of a rustic orange or something that's going to be a little bit more earthy. So you're going to be seeing that. With the maximalism trend, I thought it was interesting that there are also more trends of monochromatic rooms, so where you paint the whole room the same color, the same gray or taupe, and then you really try to make your furniture and your decor match that and be somewhat of the same thing. So having, or just having a black and white room. Black and white, really bold prints are also really big right now. So that is kind of the opposite shift of the maximalism trend of mixing and matching and doing a bunch of different things, is that you can also go on the other side of things and really keep things very uniform, and that's also going to be in style right now. So also I wanted to talk about clear containers, about some of the organizational trends. If you have watched Getting Organized with the Home Edit, you've probably noticed that there are a couple of really big trends in the organization world right now. One of them being clear containers. So clear containers make sense in a number of different places, and I mean, it makes sense to keep things separate but also make sure that you know what's in there. I think something that's also kind of funny in addition to that is another big trend is labeling everything. I follow a ton of organizers in this space, you know, from large to small, and I'm seeing things like labeling the coffee maker coffee, or labeling your washer and dryer wash and dry. So I think that's something that can be fun and that you can play with. I also think that if you are already able to see through something and you know what you have, I'm not someone that's really big on labels unless it's something that I don't know what it is. There's many of the same thing, or if it's an opaque container. So that's something that you can take with a grain of salt, but definitely having containers that are uniform, whether they are monochromatic or they are clear, and then labeling them is really huge, as I'm sure you've been seeing all over the place on social media and also on Netflix right now. One of my favorite trends for 2020, and something that's becoming even more highlighted, I think, while we've all been home and while people are getting more organized, is creating new ways to highlight sentimental pieces. So rather than having them in your closet or in a drawer, having sentimental pieces where they are more of an accent wall, maybe more than having other items. So I have something I just worked on where Tyler and I framed we have receipts from the restaurant where we went to our first date on. So I just created this where we have that. And then I want to see if I can show y'all as well. So also just this little board where it has some of our photos from all of the weddings we've gone to, some quotes, some little notes that we've sent to each other. So just highlighting, I want to do a whole video on my biggest takeaways from Getting Organized with the Home Edit, but one of my favorite things that they did was framing someone's skirt that no longer mattered to them or no longer fit them, It very much mattered to them. It was a skirt that they wore on their 40th birthday in Paris, and they bought the skirt with that intention to go to Paris on their 40th birthday. So I think that's one of my favorite things, is really highlighting sentimental pieces and making them more part of your decor rather than trying to put them in a drawer or somewhere put away. So that is everything I have for you. Those are some of the trends that I have been seeing. I'm going to continue to be on the lookout. If this is something that you find interesting, or if you would like to see a video on my biggest takeaways from Getting Organized with the Home Edit, or I already did a video on vertical folding, which was my biggest life-changing thing from watching Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, but I'd love to dive into those two aspects and really anything organization and decor. I love it all. So please let me know if any of this was helpful. I hope that it was, and until next time, enjoy celebrating today.